please. Almighty God, we're so thankful for this day and all your many blessings. Heavenly Father, we're so thankful for the opportunities that you've given us to serve you. Father, we thank you for your forgiveness of our sins, your wisdom, and your love. Heavenly Father, we pray that as we go through the business tonight, that you would guide us, have us to do your will. May everything that we do be pleasing in your sight, and please forgive us where we fail. Heavenly Father, we pray for those who are lost, sick, those who are poor, grieving. We pray for your comfort upon them. And it's in Jesus' precious name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Okay, need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Okay. Approved by, or moved by Commissioner Kruger, second by Mr. Foster. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Approval of the minutes from May 3rd, 2021. I need a motion for that.
Second.
Okay. And all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We did not have a meeting. I would just like to say, the past 2 times, we did not have a quorum 2 times ago, and then last month was at the July 4th holiday. So we'll try to have meetings as best we can from here on out. We are going to have recognition of the public, but without objection, I'm going to let that be moved down to in the new business section, because I believe most people are here to speak on the volunteer fire department stuff and the MOU for Hendersonville and all. So is anybody wanting to speak to anything else on the agenda there? Okay. So we'll go ahead and move through these reports and all and do that right before. Report of the chairman, I gave mine that we are going to try to meet here. I don't have anything else. Report of the county mayor.
No report, sir.
Okay. Report of the sheriff.
For July 2021, the sheriff's office collected $47,305.90 in fees. Our jail population was 595. There's been a lot of questions about the jail expansion. It is still not open because we don't have enough employees to open. We're 57 corrections officers short this morning. And so if you know somebody who needs a job, let me know. Animal control answered 124 calls for service. 124 animals came into the shelter, 160 left. The activity report is on the back page. It is in line with where it normally is. A special note, mental health transports are still going well with our mental health transport provider. We had 73 mental health transports in July, but the sheriff's office was only responsible for 8% of those. So it's been a huge relief.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, question.
Questions? Go ahead.
Any thoughts on why you're 57? Like, why employees are leaving or not staying, or you're not able to hire?
If they're leaving, it's at a trickle, but we're just not able to find anybody to hire right now. Every division except for the training division, 9 divisions over there, every division except for training has a shortage in it. We've never experienced this before. It's not for lack of testing, it's not for lack of advertisement. We're throwing everything we've got at it. It's not a popular time to be in police or corrections work, come to find out. But, most every restaurant in town also won't let you in after about 4 o'clock, and you have to go through the drive-thru because they can't find anybody to hire either.
Right.
So it's the same boat.
It's just trickle down.
Ours is probably just a little worse because of the field.
So, I just wanted to,
All right.
and maybe electricity.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
How much is
Oops,
the
sorry.
jail population growing?
So in the past 90 days, it's increased 150 inmates. We were the lowest that we had been since before the tower was constructed in 2003. We made it down to 450, and past 90 days, we've grown about 150. We've been 150, give or take. Today we're at 598. So
I think this last pay period I worked 78 hours helping in the jail.
we've had to pull out all the stops. Everybody from even the administration has been working a jail shift. Every detective has worked a jail shift. Almost every patrol division deputy has worked a jail shift. SROs are working jail shifts. We're doing all we can to hold it together back there.
Anyone else?
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Good luck. All right, report of the fire department.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, county fire departments, volunteer fire departments, 2,613 calls year-to-date. The call volume kind of slacked off in June, but it really picked up in July. Reports I got one for Cottontown, Shackle Island, White House Community. 41 calls for my department's the most we've ever run in 1 month since we've been open. If you look at Shackle Island, their call count doubled between June and July. So things are really hopping. The second packet I gave you is the, how we broke up the equipment fund money. We did things a little different this year. We decided how much each department was going to get, and then everybody went and sent me a list of the equipment that they're going to buy. And in most cases, the amount of equipment that they're going to buy exceeds the amount that they were allotted, so the department's going to pick up the difference. And I attached some of the quotes that I received from the other departments, and on my spreadsheet, I just abbreviated, because in some cases, it's just too much for me to transcribe. So, I have not heard from Gallatin Volunteer Fire Department on the equipment they're going to buy. So, that's, any questions or?
Did we ever work everything out with Westmoreland and their status?
Getting, I think,
Oh,
we did.
Yeah, I wasn't involved in that, so. So it's okay for me to go ahead and start purchasing?
That's not the question for me, I guess. Is it already been approved?
It's been approved, I think you'll need to talk to finance.
Yeah.
They're the ones that will-
What you usually do is submit what we've done in the past is you submit the
Yeah, some of
invoice
those
and
usually
then
Law,
go
yes.
to-
to us and we pass it to.
I was just saying, in previous years, what we've done was as soon as they agreed with it, y'all voted on it and said you were good with it, and then David immediately let them start doing it then. It didn't come back in front of budgets or recall.
Yeah, and Joe,
Just
it'll
with the one
depend,
time.
you'll need
As
to
long as y'all approve it.
PO, and it'll have to
Send it
be
via-
either bought off state bid or competitively bid.
Well, that's not how we've done it in the past.
Well, that's the way,
Supposed to have been submitting
Yeah.
a.
Less than $10,000, it doesn't have to.
yeah,
But anything over $10,000.
over 10,000.
Chief, we'll get with them.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Anything else?
Just say, again, I'm just bragged on you guys here recently, in the last week, about the last 3 years and how you all have worked together to try to make a difference here and get what you need from the different departments. And I think 4 years ago, everybody was very separated as far as that went, and you all are doing a great job of trying to come together and figure out what you need for everybody, and I appreciate that.
Well, I'll tell you, in the meetings, I'm surprised how smooth it goes. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, under the report of the Emergency Services Director, they have an item under new business that also does not require a vote or anything. It's really just informational, and they're gonna do that as part of their report. That would be 14B is what they're doing on this.
Good evening. As a part of our report, as the chairperson said, I'm having to discuss with you things that I've never had to do in a 30-year career. Just like Chief Pickard from Sheriff's Department, we're facing critical staffing issues. COVID has changed all of our lives, but it's definitely changed the face of healthcare. So you guys have your report that we typically give you. It's missing the revenue portion. Finance didn't have the revenue because today's the first day of working the month, so they'll have the July closed out. But I do want you to see our responses. Our responses are out the roof. Our past 5 months, each month has exceeded the other month. And each of those 5 months are historically the busiest month in the history of Sumner County EMS, regardless of it being a tornado, ice storm, no matter what has happened in the past 5 months have been the busiest that we've ever had. There's a nationwide nursing shortage. There is a nationwide EMT and paramedic shortage. We are short 12 full-time personnel. That was when we did this PowerPoint on Friday. Today we are short 14 personnel. And we are potentially facing the attrition of another 10 because Metro Nashville Fire is getting ready to hire again. Our call volume is continuing to climb. But what I want to bring to your all's attention is our transfers. We have a 53% increase in the number of transfers that we take from a Sumner County hospital to an out-of-county hospital. 53%. So in doing the math and looking at the data, this year there's 5,693 hours that your ambulance has not been in your community because it's been taking hospital-to-hospital transfers. To the point that from January 1 till June 30, there were 433 calls in which it took us longer than 15 minutes to respond to an emergency because an ambulance had to come from another community. So maybe the Hendersonville truck was gone, maybe the Shackle Island truck was gone, the next closest one had to respond in. Also, the problem is when they do take these calls to Nashville, when they take these transfers to Nashville, all of these hospitals are in a crisis right now too. So they have a nursing shortage. Our average wait time is 1 hour and 15 minutes. So from the time it takes that ambulance, let's say the ambulance responds from Westmoreland, to come to Sumner Regional, to pick up a patient, to take to Vanderbilt. So it takes them 1 hour or so to do all that process, to load the patient up and get to Vanderbilt. They're standing at the hospital in Vanderbilt for over 1 hour, waiting on someone to take care of that patient so they can offload it. And then they've got 1 hour's drive back, depending on rush hour, depending on traffic. So an average transfer takes that ambulance out of our county 2 hours and 45 minutes. They are as excessive sometimes as 4.5 hours. If you hit it just right in the middle of the night, sometimes we can get them back in 1.5 hours to 2 hours. But the average of all is 2 hours and 45 minutes. So every time these ambulances are transferring these hospital patients, that's taking a local resource from our citizens. What has that done to our maintenance cost? Our ambulances are so busy right now, we're changing the oil in an ambulance every 6,000 miles. That's every 36 days. We're having to do an oil change on it. That has increased. Changing the tires, doing all that stuff. A 2019 ambulance that's been on the road less than 2 years already has over 125,000 miles. It blew an engine last week. So we got 3 units, and in the past 2 weeks it had complete fuel system failure, a $5,000 per ambulance cost to repair. In addition to responding to all these, healthcare workers have experienced pandemic fatigue. So just like Chief Pickard was saying, we've got 14 openings. We've had applications out for a few weeks now. We've received 3. 3 applications for 14 vacancies. It is a global problem. What we are getting ready to do, as far as what we wanted to advise you about, is an operational change. We want the ambulances to be in the community. We want to allow First Call and any of these other private services to come into the hospital and take that transfer to Nashville so we can be there when your loved one stops breathing, when that child has a medical emergency, rather than us being tied up out of county. It should be a minimal revenue impact, especially when you take into consideration some of the things that will be changing. But that's also one of the things that our people talk about, is when they've already ran 18 and 20 emergency calls during the shift, and they finally get to lay down at 3 a.m. and the phone rings at 3:30, and they have to go to the hospital and take another transfer to Nashville. So we feel like it is crucial at this point in time to step back from these transfers. There's nurses and there's doctors at those hospitals that can stabilize those people until First Call can get there. We've met with First Call. I think First Call has some representatives that are in the hall. They are going to staff up. They have a brick and mortar operation here in Sumner County to help handle these transfers from our local hospitals to the hospitals in Nashville, so we can focus on taking care of our citizens during their emergency. We have always been able to do everything and be an all hazards EMS, but I think we've hit a crucial point that right now we need to let someone else handle the transfers and us be here for the citizens. Montgomery County, Wilson County, Cheatham County, and Dixon County have all followed suit and have gotten out of the transfer business in the past year so they can keep their ambulances in their community. That's another need for us to do that. If we don't do this, the way that we're operating right now is not sustainable. There was an ambulance that we had to shut down on Sunday because of staffing, and if we can't fill some of these seats, we will have to potentially shut down other ambulances. So we're coming to you, telling you that this is our recommended change. Allow First Call to perform these, keep our crews available, and hopefully this will slow the burnout that they're experiencing. Chief Pickard said nobody wants to be in law enforcement right now. Well, during the pandemic, nobody wants to be in healthcare either. So it's a challenge that we're seeing. I'll be glad to answer any questions for anybody.
Mr. Chairman, if I may comment, I was out talking to Chief Miller last week, and I think Sam Clark walked in the room and said, well, we got another applicant that's just fallen out. They're not going to come interview. And we're having a very difficult time with personnel, not just there, but ECC, all in public safety. And Chief Miller discussed this with me about 2 weeks ago, said he was going to bring it to the commissioners. I don't see that we have any choice. Even if we threw money at the problem now, I don't think it's going to resolve anything. Do you, Chief?
No.
And
this is going to get them some rest. There's some things that we've got to look at. We all know the county is growing at record paces, and we're going to have to grow the infrastructure to keep up with that. And in the future, we're going to have to ask for additional ambulances, and other counties around us are offering pay raises to keep people in healthcare. Right now, we want to go with this approach at least, and give the transfers to somebody else so we're not beating our people up so bad.
Yeah, so we don't have to close stations.
Yes.
When you and I spoke the other day, I think you mentioned this, but I want to reiterate. There will be times when this is going on, there's going to be times of the day that there's not going to be an ambulance in Castillo Springs. And then another part of the day or another day, there may not be an ambulance in White House while these people are gone, because you cannot cover it all if they're constantly going to Nashville for things. So we're leaving some of our communities. Doesn't mean an ambulance is not going to come for them, but it's not going to be the one that should be coming for them.
Yeah, just because you have an ambulance station 2 miles down the road, on average right now, we're running 107 calls a day. So any of these calls takes between an hour and a half and 3 hours for them to get back in service and get back to your community. So we take this piece of the puzzle out, that'll increase the time that we're there. But anytime that an ambulance departs your local station, we move our ambulances to get them closer to zone lines, so it'll shorten their response time.
Chief, how close are we to losing ambulance services due to the staffing shortage? Yeah, like closing stations.
We had to shut an ambulance down Sunday because we didn't have staffing. We're teetering right there. If we have another 10 or 12 people leave, or we're unable to fill the seats that we have vacant right now, it is a very realistic opportunity that I'll be calling our commissioners saying, these zones and these zones are uncovered and they'll be picked up by neighboring. I'm just going to be transparent and honest with you. Like I said, I've never had to face something this dire in 30 years of EMS profession.
Mr. Foster.
Chief, I think it's a great idea, common sense solution to this problem. But a couple of years ago, I think your department mentioned that the patients were requesting to go to a particular hospital, even if it's on the far side of Nashville. Or is there any way to curtail that, or do we do that now as a practice to let them pick the hospital, or we take them to the nearest hospital?
We do. We take them to where they want to go. If we pick up a patient, if I picked up you today, you were having chest pain and
Oh,
you
thank
wanted
God.
to go. I'm not trying
Yeah,
to be
that's a bad example.
That's what's different, that's what's different on the EMS side. Because the patient is the bill payer. The patient has a right to decide where they go. So if you said we want to go to Vanderbilt because that's where your cardiologist is, that's where you're established, then that's where we're going to
Okay,
take
so,
you.
okay.
We're still going to do that. We still have to do that. If I pick you up and you're a trauma patient, then it makes sense, if you're a severe trauma patient, to take you to the trauma center. So you need to go to Vanderbilt. So we're still going to do that. But rather than going into the hospital where they have the ability to stabilize you with nurses and doctors, they can wait on that other service to come in and transfer that patient down. It's not as bad as someone who is laying in the ditch that needs an ambulance and there's no other caregiver there to provide that aid. That's the main thing, is we're talking about transfer on
Mr. Hyde.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, but the question I would have is how available are these private services here in the county? Do they have vehicles stationed here ready to assist?
Yes.
Because, I mean, on the other side of the coin, the person that is wanting to be transferred to Vanderbilt or needing to be transferred to Vanderbilt may be you know, someone's mother or father or whatever, and it may be very, very important. I see where you're coming from, but I'd want to make sure that these private companies are aware that we need them to have vehicles stationed here in Sumner County to help immediately.
Yes, sir, absolutely, and they do. They have a station there on Long Hollow Pike, and they have a couple ambulances there every day now, and they have agreed to staff that up by 1 to 2 more ambulances to handle the demand by us doing this. We're going to take a week to 10-day transition period and work this out with them, and if they're busy, they have agreed that rather than holding it and waiting for someone else to take that call, they'll give it to the next one. So they would give it to Vanderbilt, has a ground ambulance provider now called Vandy Ground, or Medic One. There's a plethora of private services out there that's what, they don't have the emergency calls that we do. So they work on getting and live off of these transfers.
Anyone else?
I think there's no question that we need to be making sure we're servicing our citizens in Sumner County. And if our ambulances aren't here, they can't do that. They're out for 4.5 hours transferring one citizen from here to Vanderbilt. How many calls from people that are here are they missing or needing them?
And we need to grow, like I said, and I'm not asking for that now, but we need to prepare for that. We've got 540 square miles and over 200,000 people. We're covering it with 13 ALS ambulances. So, you know, we're gonna have to look at that as well in the future.
I think this is a great step one anyway, and hopefully that will help. If it doesn't, then we try to do some more, we'll go to step 2, whatever that will be.
Again, my understanding is there's nothing for us to vote here. They're just
Correct.
telling
This
us,
is just-
they're gonna
Just
do it
making you
and
aware
tell
of
us
an
why.
operational change.
You hired this man to handle it, he's just telling you.
All right, and we're glad we did.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Report of the Emergency Management Agency.
I know you guys have got a lot to discuss tonight, so I'll make this real short. 3 items. Hazard mitigation, basic emergency operations plan, and COVID, something we really don't want to talk that much about. But we are working with, there are a few municipalities that don't have their resolution to be part of the hazard mitigation plan. We're working on that with them to get them in. Our emergency operations plan is up to be renewed. We're rewriting it now, so it's going to take a little time to do that. We're working with the state to get that written, get it vetted, and get it approved. And then we actually met with State Health today, and we continually monitor COVID. And we've had a couple of Zoom calls with the Sheriff's Office to discuss needs there. One thing that I had to send out to all of our public safety partners is the fact that we don't do PPE anymore. We don't have the resource to go to Nashville and get PPE based on a request from one of the fire departments or one of the law enforcement agencies or EMS or whomever. So I sent an email out a few weeks ago to let everybody know that you're basically on your own for PPE. EMS, I think, is in a position where they're having to limit what they give to the fire departments. And I mean, Chief, you might speak to that, but they're limiting what they can do because they're limited to their vendors. So the reason I'm telling you this is look for the potential for a request for more funding for PPE, gloves, masks, gowns, things like that. So that's kind of out of our hand, but look for that. And the discussion with COVID will continue on, and we'll continue to monitor it, and we'll push information out as needed. That's my report.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Thank you. Report of the Emergency Communications Center.
Good afternoon. So I'm just going to pick up the baton from Chief Pickard and Chief Miller. On a good note, we've hired our deputy director. She started today. Her name is Christy Davis, and she comes to us from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So we're going to give her a good chance to succeed here and show her the ropes. We'll bring her to the next meeting. We promoted a supervisor to the CAD administrator, which then allows us now to fill a position for a supervisor. In the month of June, we handled 28,675 calls. July, 29,426, and this is just a rough number. We have 11 vacancies, just like the chief said. We went to 2 job fairs. We have got the announcement on our Facebook page. We are just not getting any response to our applications. We have another job fair on Friday, and we'll go there again and see if we can recruit anyone. So far, we've been to 2, and like I said, we've not had anyone apply. The applications are trickling in. I think in the last 2 weeks, we may have received 3 or 4. That is typically not the case. So we are looking to announce on Indeed in the next 2 weeks if we don't get anything from this job fair. But again, no one really is calling us back when we do attempt to reach them. And when we do finally get an answer, they're not interested. So we are in the same boat as our other partners here. And that's all I have for my report.
Questions? Questions here? I appreciate it. Okay, seeing no old business on the agenda, we're going to move on down to new business, and this is the Hendersonville Fire Department Memorandum of Understanding.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Before I leave to go to our Education Committee, I wanted to make you aware of something. I met a friend of mine out in the lobby. I went to school with her, been friends with her a long time, known her, graduated high school with her. And I just want to let everybody here know, let this committee know. She told me that there's a rumor that's being spread that we are getting out of the volunteer fire business. And let me tell everybody here, whoever came up with that, that's dangerous, that's unproductive, and it's not true. And you're all commissioners here, you correct me if I'm saying something that's not the truth. I've never heard anybody discuss that. I've never heard anybody even mention that, refer to that. And whether you want to do this or not, I talked to Mayor Clary in Hendersonville. This is a proposal to add additional service to the county by partnering with them to build a fire station out in the Durham Farm area that would go outside the city and provide additional fire service. And as you well hear, our county is growing and we're trying to meet those challenges. I, for one, rely on Cottontown, and I know you a long time, Joe, as chief. Where I live out in the unincorporated part of the county. It would be a utter epic disaster if we did not have volunteers providing service. We appreciate you. You work for no pay, and we have actually increased their budget every year that I know of. So I wanted to make that statement and let everybody know there has been no discussion about that. So we appreciate you being here. Whatever said, we want to help, and we want to make sure that everyone that lives out in the unincorporated part of the county has reliable fire service for public health and safety. And that's all I wanted to say, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Can I do that?
Give me just a second.
Mr.
So, go ahead.
Mouse, if anybody's, I doubt anybody's in for education, but we're moving education over to the main chambers.
Okay.
Thank you. That's why.
Commissioner Good, I'll be right here.
I understand.
Okay. I was just gonna reiterate what he said, all the study, the fire department study we've been working on for a couple of years now. Anthony's been a part of that discussions we've had, the meetings we've had, and never once has reducing funding even been mentioned. I mean, even a reduction in funding has never been mentioned in volunteer fire. So I'm not sure where it came from, but it certainly did not come from our study either.
Certainly not that I know of, for sure. Okay, we're gonna move on here. I know we have some public folks here. Again, this is for the Hendersonville Fire Department Memorandum of Understanding. I'm gonna let Commissioner Taylor come up and speak here first, and then we'll let everybody that wants to speak, even if you got here late and need to add a little here, we can do that, so.
I'll try and make it really quick for y'all. I don't want to torture everybody. For those of us on the commission, just about everybody in emergency services, for about 7 years now, we've looked at different ways to do fire protection for the unincorporated parts of the county. CTAS was supposed to help us. Our volunteer fire was fantastic because they had to do a bunch of surveys. We had to have ECC give them a bunch of calls for service. CTAS gave us a couple different models. An example would be like Williamson County, they've got 12 people on staff that oversee all the volunteer fire. That doesn't work with our volunteer fire. So we've met with them over the years. We've taken what CTAS has said, we've said what our committees have said, and what we've done is we've reinforced and strengthened our volunteer fire. And we've done that because more so than any commission ever before in the history, we've included, and I want to make sure everyone understands, the funding for volunteer fire that comes out isn't it's not, hey, it might get it, they might not. It's included in the tax rate. Every year, they get that amount of money no matter what, and to the point where we include in the tax rate to make sure they got it. The money Chief was talking about a second ago that's divvied out is included in that. It's a set rate that every volunteer fire gets. It's an additional money they have to divide out and figure out each year, which they do an amazing job. On top of that, we've come around and we've told them that we're going to start working on their big projects. The way we've done it right now is our volunteer fire kind of takes care of the day-to-day business. We give them an extra $24,000, but they have to handle some small equipment, keeping people staffed, doing different things. We recognize that but through their fundraising, they'll never hit the numbers they need to replace a $100,000 engine or a water tank or any of those things. It's impossible. It's unfathomable to think they could. So what we've done there is we're including in our bond issues over the next 2 to 3 years, hopefully, to buy all that for them. And in fact, this is where I say our volunteer fire do a great job working together. I met with all the chiefs a couple months ago, and we sat down, we just said, hey, we need to know exactly what you need, how much it is, in a guesstimate, and then give us a priority. And this is where I want to brag on our chiefs, because it would have been real easy if I was on New Shackle and Carolyn's at White House for us to argue about who should be number one on that list. Not a problem. All of them got together. They said, here's the departments that need it the worst. They put them at the top, and they worked their way down. They did an amazing job of making sure that they put it together the right way. It's just fantastic. I can't go on enough because if you've ever been around 24 different people, it's kind of hard to get them to agree to everything sometimes. So, next part, that's our big plan. The way we do the unincorporated is we support our volunteer fire. We're going to make sure they have the right heavy equipment so that as the county grows, they can continue to grow those services. And as we need to, when tanker trucks go down, things like that, things we know they can't do, we'll work on that with bond issues for the county. The second part of the plan we came up with was we're going to try and have the municipalities help us as much as they can. If you're not aware of it, every municipality already helps. Hendersonville covers outside of the city limits. Gallatin does, they all do. That's part of it. But there's never been anything on paper to say how they do that, if they're compensated for it or what we do. Portland, we built a fire hall a while back and we helped pay for it. The county, when I say we. The reason we do is because we put an ambulance bay in there. There's ambulance bays all over the county right now that we didn't help pay for. we're not gonna go back and try and take care of that. That's not a way to do it. What we've done is we've said, if we can work it out where we can help with a bond issue for a municipality and they can extend coverage. Hendersonville's the first one we tried. And the reason I say, just so everybody understands how the MOU process works, and that means a memorandum of understanding. Ms. Denham in our law department put together what we considered a basic package, just said, hey, we want to, how much would it cost for a building, and then in turn, how much coverage would we get for how long? And we gave some parameters in there. We sent that November, I guess, of last year. Hendersonville got it, beat up on it like they need to, sent it back to us in July. What you have here is what they're proposing. We're not agreeing to anything, and if you're familiar, I hate to use this analogy because it's a bad one, but if you ever bought a used car, then you know. You kind of go back and forth a little bit, and that's what we're doing. Hendersonville presented something. What happens is the Emergency Service Committee will look at the actual fire protection part, the kind of nuts and bolts of it. They don't vote yes or no. What they'll do is they'll just say, this part's good, this part's bad, and mark through it, change it. It then goes to budget. The budget committee will say, same thing for the money part. Hey, we agree to this, we don't think it's like that. We'll go back and forth, figuring out what we think is the best. That's a proposal. Then Ms. Denham will take it, clean it back up, and send it over to Hendersonville. They'll have it. If they choose to accept it, that's great. If they don't, that's great. It'll kind of go back and forth until there's a document that both sides have agreed on. And then once it's agreed on, it has to go through this committee, budget committee, legislative committee, and then our full commission for us to agree to it. So it's a long, lengthy process. I'll be quite frank, if we have a document before the end of the year that both sides agree to, I'll be really shocked. It's government work, it's never fast. That's life. But that's where we're at on the MOU. So I want to make sure everybody understands as you go forward and comment, and I love the fact that we get this many people to show up for our volunteer fire. One, the commitment for our volunteer fire has never been stronger. We put it in the tax rate. Our commitment for our volunteer fire has never been stronger. We're going to make sure and do the bond issues for their big, heavy equipment that's never been done before.
More debt.
Ma'am?
More debt, not a good idea.
Okay.
We gotta pay for it somehow.
We're not
here's the thing.
speaking in these
And then the
committees.
next part, and that's okay. Then the next part is, the last part that we've kind of worked out with CTAS and everybody else is, rather than have someone over our volunteer fire trying to tell them how to do it, they're gonna be kind of their own thing, and then they're gonna be supplemented by the cities. And in turn, the cities will work with them, which they always have. I don't know how long that's what's gonna be. It's a lot easier to get our volunteer fire money and then get their big engines before we probably get those MOUs. And what I was gonna say is Hendersonville's the first one. If we can get that successful, that's great. Then it'd probably be Gallatin, then White House. So it's not something that's gonna happen overnight. And obviously, it's a twofold process for our county. But we recognize that as the county grows and you start getting denser and denser populations, you're gonna have to make sure you have the right kind of fire protection. So that's where we're at. And just so everybody knows, the last thing we want to do is get rid of our volunteer fire. That is our bread and butter for the county. There's not a county, there's two counties in the state that have a fire tax. And what that is, that's a secondary tax that goes for the unincorporated parts that pays for their fire. We're not doing that. I don't think it passed for starters. I don't think, because it's one you have to vote for yourselves, and I don't think anybody's inclined to vote for that. But two, we think there's a better model we can use through private donations, through public donations, which is our part, and then them continuing to raise money on their own. So I appreciate the minute or two. And like I said, I apologize if anybody came out here thinking there was something different. Our commitment is to our volunteer fire, hands down. I mean, it's a fantastic group of men and women that risk their lives for very little compensation, if any, and they do it because of their love for this county. So if we can support them in every way we can, I'm proud to say the men and women on this board, this committee right here, have been doing that strong for 7 years, and at a level that has never been done before in this county. And I challenge anybody to show differently when you come to the money, because it's important. Everybody says whatever's important to you is what you're spending money on. We spend our money on our volunteer fire and have for a while. So that's it, sir.
Thank you, sir. On our public, we have Steve Frost up first, and you can stand anywhere you want to. You can stand up here if you want. Speak.
Somebody needs to be close enough to.
That's true.
Close enough to the owl where you can, probably come a little closer to the table so the camera can pick you up.
Okay. I'm Steve Frost. I'm the treasurer with Shackle Island Volunteer Fire Department. I appreciate y'all letting us speak here tonight. Heard some great things here already, so I'm very happy with that. The things that we want to, I guess, voice is we're very concerned about our money. The county has blessed us with an incredible building. We appreciate that. You've done everything the mayor said. The funding has increased, and we appreciate that. And we can be whatever you want us to be. A volunteer fire department can ramp up or ramp down, either way. But a lot of our money, most of our money, comes from our mail out. And I'm concerned about the confusion that the citizens may have that we're no longer their fire department. And that was my main concern. When we do a mail out, and y'all know this on voting and whatnot, 70% of the people never give. And so we're dealing with this 30%, and we hold them tight, and we're so appreciative of them. And just worried about this and the way it looks. We want to be friends with everybody. We're great friends with Chief here in Hendersonville. Hendersonville's our friend, Goodlettsville's our friend, Gallatin's our friend, EMS is our friend, 911. We have to get along with everybody to do what we do. We've got a fantastic fire chief, Marty Bowers. Most of y'all know him. And Marty's done the job for 30 years getting along with people. I think he does that better than doing fire. So that's what we've always wanted to have, is a great relationship and a friendship with everybody. Y'all have been so good to us, and we're just concerned. We want to do what we're doing, and we can do whatever you need us to do. I was going to say real quick, there's a volunteer fire department in Tennessee. There's many, but you know, they've got 200 volunteers, and they handle 3 cities, and they've got 5 stations. So a volunteer fire department can be anything you want it to be. And I just wanted to make sure we all knew that, but we do appreciate what you've done for us, and I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Marty Bowers, William, correct? Chief Bowers, just reading off the list.
I just want to say a few things. One of my concerns is on that memorandum, it comes across as Hendersonville will be first called. Now, I talked to Chief Bush, and he says that we will still be primary. And they will be called the same time we are, which will put them en route. And if we need them, they're already en route, which is great. The other way around, if they're called first, which I found out, I hope that's not going to be, what'll happen, I think, is we're going to get the lift assists and the medicals and everything, and my guys are very well trained. We've got paramedics, we got EMTs, we got swift water rescue. And these guys are really working for the community because they love it. And you probably know that volunteer fire departments is a stepping stone. We have sent so many young men to a good career. And a lot of these men that are on main paid for fire departments come back and make the community a whole lot safer. And I just want to sort of clear up that, hope that it works the way it's supposed to. On the 4.8 million, I just sort of wonder if maybe if that can't be siphoned off and maybe make the volunteer departments better, but that's up to you guys. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, sir. Pat McDaniel.
Yes, I'll just sit here since I'm on the front row,
That's
if
fine.
that's okay. I have lived where I live now in the county since 1992. If they want to start building this, and I've seen maps of roads that would come under that area, if I wanted to live in the city, I would have moved to the city. I just want to be left alone, let me live in the county. I don't want to have to pay any extra taxes, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. Just leave me alone, I'm in the county, and that's where I want to be. Referring to what some of the others have said earlier, they said because we're having so much building going on, stop the building. I mean, you can't keep building place on place on place on place. That's why you're having shortages of everything. Just stop the building, but that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Mansfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess I'm going to address a couple things that have been said here and not full clarity. I do have an email from 2019 from a commissioner pushing for fire tax districts and fire districts. So that is a push of Sumner County, and it basically talks about CTAS, which I voted to not fund CTAS from the county last time because they're a lobbying arm. Usually is not in our best interest, in my opinion. But CTAS is a huge proponent of fire districts, would generate a separate tax line item on property tax bills for those being serviced in the county. And then this commissioner also said, in talking with other county representatives, it was her understanding that most agree fire districts would be ideal, but it would generate an enormous pushback from county residents. Well, there's a reason why. County fire tax districts are extremely, astronomically unaffordable for county residents. It puts a disproportionate amount of burden on county residents in rural areas, especially underserved rural areas. So there absolutely is, and unfortunately, county mayor's not here, but in a November 2020 article, Hendersonville alderman stated about this fire station we're talking about, Hendersonville. Keep in mind, Hendersonville's already voted to approve the bond for this fire station. They don't need our money for it. He said, it's more cost effective for the county if they don't have to continue to supply money to a volunteer fire department over the years. But the only volunteer fire department in earshot of this one is the Shackle Island Volunteers. So we use their numbers. Based on our funding, I'm gonna say it's $20 million because we now having to charge them $4,000 a year to pay back radio fees. Excuse me, so it's $20,000 we give them a year, not 24, based on what they have to give back to us. It would take 240 years for Shackle Island to get the same equal amount of money than what we're suggesting paying for this fire hall in Hendersonville. This fire hall deal, $4.8 million for a fire hall in Hendersonville and a fire truck that, one, they don't need. Hendersonville has more fire stations than any other city per capita in the state of Tennessee, based on what I've been told by Alderman in Hendersonville. Two, they've already voted to approve the bond for this. Three, what businesses the county have building a fire department for an entire city when we've never done that before? If you're talking about an ambulance bay in Portland that also has EMA equipment, it was, I think, around $1 million, and that's servicing 2 different departments of the county for storage of equipment, also as ambulance. So if you want to talk about, hey, we're going to contribute funding for what they're already building because we want to put an ambulance, I think that's a different discussion, and I think everybody would agree with that. But this is not what we're talking about. We're talking about completely funding a fire department. 12 years for the city of Hendersonville they can walk away from, extending the fire coverage area almost 5 miles out into the county, which includes my District 11 and my fire hall, Shackle Island Volunteer Fire Department. So when you're saying a county alderman says it's more effective for the county, they don't have to continue to supply money to the volunteer fire department over the years, well, that's just factually incorrect. The math is way off. Obviously, it takes 240 years to make up that $4.8 million based on our funding to Shackle Island. And the fact that we're extending coverage area, this is setting the basis for this email, which is what they've been working on since 2017 when the county commission passed a resolution for CTAS to look into fire tax districts. This is a stepping stone for metro form of government. This is what this stuff does. It's just more government. People in the county don't want to mess with their, if you wanted to have fire protection from Hendersonville, you live in the city of Hendersonville. People live in the county because they don't want it. They understand. People try to argue about ISO ratings. Well, let's talk about that. The state of Tennessee, there's no legal requirement for any insurance provider to increase the ISO rating or to decrease coverage because you get a higher ISO covering. There's no obligation whatsoever to do that. What this ISO rating, basically, it seems to a lot of times be more of a sales tool to get funding for more fire departments that not necessarily needed, that could be reduction of homeowners' premiums. And that's not true. I mean, it's not guaranteed with anything. And plus, if you're going to live in a city and get tax city services, you're going to pay a lot more in property taxes than you are as a county resident. So there's a lot of things missaid, but this is an effort to defund volunteer fire across the county long term, in my opinion, and the citizens' opinion, based on emails that I've seen from the county talking about fire tax districts, increasing property taxes as a line item on county residents, and then agreeing that the county residents would be opposed to it. So it's absolutely unneeded, unfounded, and honestly, I don't understand why in the world we would want to spend almost $5 million for the city of Hendersonville for something that, based on the call numbers I pulled from Shackle Island, had pulled. There's roughly, in a 4-year period, only 10 calls I was told that actually would meet the MOU requirements. So if you stretch out over 12 years, which is what the MOU was, it comes down to basically us paying Hendersonville $160,000 per call to respond to an emergency. 90% and I don't know if there's anybody here would argue with me, 90% of all calls for emergencies are medically related, as chief is related to us, and if anything, we have a crisis on the ambulance side, not on fire protection. So to build a fire hall is just ridiculous. I think it's insane. I don't know why we're proposing this, unless you're planning on increasing and going towards a paid county fire department that is increasing property taxes for citizens in these residences in these areas. That's the only reason, that logical conclusion I can come to in looking at this than anybody else. So it just doesn't make sense. So just wanted to clear that up about who said about defunding volunteer fires, Hendersonville Alderman, about basically so they can get it. I mean, why wouldn't Hendersonville want this deal? They're getting a free fire hall and fire truck. It's a great deal for them. It's a bad deal for the county. We have an opportunity to say, no, we're not going to do that. If anything, let's bolster up our volunteer fire departments, or let's bolster up EMS as far as if you want to talk about giving money towards a wing of a fire hall, not funding the whole thing, leave our coverage area alone. Shackle Highland has no problem with our coverage area. The residents love our Shackle Island Fire Department. They are not asking for Hendersonville's involvement. They are not asking for Hendersonville's coverage, and they don't want it. And they don't want a possibility that it happen negatively to volunteer fire long term. And this is a Pandora's box that's going to open the door to that. So I respectfully ask you guys to vote no on this and kill it on the table tonight.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mansfield. We appreciate that. Michelle Jovitz. Hopefully I said that right.
Yeah, close enough.
Okay.
Michelle Giovanni.
Sorry.
I live in Gallatin. I live within the city limits of Gallatin, so I get to pay taxes twice. I get to pay county taxes and Gallatin city taxes. So I'm not happy about y'all spending my money on a fire hall for Hendersonville because I live in Gallatin. And I think listening to the EMS and the 911 and hearing how much we're lacking with those services that the county is supposed to pay for, we need to put that money towards the county EMS. And my mom and dad live probably less than half a mile from the Shackle Island Volunteer Fire Station. So this is upsetting to me to think that that would be something that could possibly go away because they're senior citizens and they need to have that coverage. They live in the county. They don't live in city limits of Hendersonville. So I would like to see this $4.8 million spent on county emergency services, not Hendersonville. I read all of the stuff that comes through the city of Gallatin because I live in Gallatin and I like to pay attention to what's going on. In the last, just this year, several different annexation plan of service reports that were approved for annexations that brought land in from the east and from the north of the city. We need 2 new fire halls in Gallatin. We need Fire Hall 6 and number 7. And are y'all gonna pay for that with county money? I mean, this is crazy to pay for one city, and you can't pay for all the city's fire stations. Like, your job is to pay attention to the citizens of the county who don't live in the cities. The city's job is to pay for their own fire stations. I already pay taxes in the city and the county. I don't want to have to be like paying for Hendersonville's fire station too. So, yeah, I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. John Miller.
I don't really have a lot. I just wanted to say that you gotta be careful. This one's gonna open Pandora's box.
Thank you, sir. I do appreciate it. I appreciate that. That should close the public speaking.
I didn't sign up because we typically have offer courtesy that the commissioners don't have to sign up.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
I wasn't gonna say anything, but there's some information that's been stated that I don't agree with tonight. Since I've been here 11 years now, we haven't increased money for the volunteer fire departments over the years. We've increased it, the capital outlay, we offer those for equipment and stuff, but if we recall back to 2019, when I think a lot of y'all were here, we didn't even have, initially, we didn't even have volunteer fire departments in the budget. It got added back that night. And actually got the capital money added that night, if you recall. So it's a part of the charitable contributions that comes from the tax rate. Or maybe it's part of the tax rate. But
It's a tax rate.
It's a part of the tax rate.
anyways, this makes me think about many things out in the county because I'm all over the county every day. Fire hydrants, water, access to water, access to fire hydrants. Are we gonna put in the fire hydrants where they're needed? I don't think the city of Hendersonville has pumper trucks or whatever, tanker trucks, whatever you call them. I fight for water. There's probably areas, I'd say, within the service area that probably certain roads that doesn't even have water lines. So that's something that, you need to really look at a lot of this. And like some of the other people have stated, we did contribute to a new Portland Fire Department. We made a contribution for part of the construction. I am proud to see the increase in funding for the volunteer fire departments in the capital outlay, but it hasn't been, the $24,000 hasn't increased from 24,000. And it went from 12 to 14, and from 14 to 24, if I'm not mistaken. So that's good to get it to 24. But one thing that financially, I served on the budget committee for 4 years, and looking at this from a financial standpoint, and like some of the other people have stated, financially, this is a reward, in my opinion. This is a financial reward for a city, no disrespect to the city of Hendersonville or anybody involved in the city of Gallatin, but I'll say it till the cows come home. We gotta stop rewarding people for irresponsible, unmanaged growth. This area is in a hot spot for irresponsible, unmanaged growth. Durham Farms I don't think that was a good decision. Norman Farms, which we approved, I don't think was a good decision. You're packing too many people in windy country, crooked roads, and people buy out in the county not to have to deal with city and county, city taxes. And I don't think that we should be rewarding somebody for not managing their growth. And that's exactly what this is. And it will never have my support. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Again, we'll close public comments at this time. We are, just so everybody understands, I may have said this up front if I didn't. We are not doing an up and down vote on this tonight. That is not for this committee to do. We're here to discuss this particular thing and things that we like about it and don't like about it. And we'll get to that in a second if anybody has anything to say, and then we'll talk about what we're going to do with it. But I'm going to say a few things right here. I think I can see where the misinformation is coming from on some of this. First of all, let me say that a Hendersonville alderman has zero to do with anything that this county commission does or this committee. So they can say all day long that they think we should not be funding volunteer fire departments, and that has nothing to do with us. We can show you from the votes, we can show you from the raises that we have given. They may not have been every year, but they've certainly got more money, and the people standing in the back here that use that equipment have seen it and can tell you if you just want to go over there and ask them about it after it's over with.
I don't need to ask.
I'm not speaking to you, sir,
Well, you're directing
but I
toward
can
me,
speak
sir.
to you if you'd like me to.
Well, let's talk.
Let's do it right after this meeting. As far as the fire tax goes, I don't know what email you said. I can tell you, we've had that discussion multiple times since I've been on this committee, and I've been on here ever since I've been on the commission for 7 or 8 years now. And every time I've spoken to anybody about it, if it was brought up in any way, shape, or form, everybody said there was no way that was going to happen. So if it's a plan in the works, it's some plan that I don't know about that's working through the back channels, but I can tell you right now, it's not it. CTAS, as far as that going and that was some secret plan or whatever, I can point to the person in this room that asked me to do the CTAS study, but I can tell you the volunteer fire departments asked us to do the CTAS study, and it's on the record because it happened in this meeting. Okay? So if I cleared that much up, let me see if there's any more on here we need to do as well. Portland Fire Department, we did not build a fire station for the Portland Fire Department. We built an ambulance bay and 2 bays for EMS. Portland decided they were going to build a fire department on that end of town and asked if we could put the building together, share the architect fees and all that kind of stuff like that. So that's what happened there. We did not build anything for the city of Portland for fire. Okay?
It was donated. The school was a partnership with the schools too because of the land.
Right. Well, the schools donated the land for it. That's correct. And I can talk about some fire hydrants or things like that. But misinformation hurts everybody. Misinformation hurts everybody. We have phones. You can call, ask. You can call your fire people and ask what's going on. Do they get enough money? Not even close. They get a drop in the bucket to what they deserve and what they need. But we have certainly made strides in trying to give them some stuff, and they're working on even more right now. So all of that stuff has nothing to do with this MOU. Okay? We need to discuss that now. I can tell you I have concerns over this, major concerns over it. Okay? And there's all kinds of things. I have concerns with building a $5 million building for a city because people are right. If we do that, I think Gallatin's already asked for one prior to this point. Okay? I have issues with that, but it's not up for just me to decide. We have to talk about that. There's things in this that I certainly don't agree with, that if it was built, that the city could walk away from that in 5 years, and actually, I'm not even sure the other part didn't even say anytime during the first 12 years that they can, void that agreement. No way you can build a multi-billion-dollar building for them, and then you can just decide next year, hey, we decided we're out of this, we don't need to go. It says in here that the city is going to own that building. Well, that's not, again, what happened in Portland. If we want to build an ambulance bay out there if we need to, or something for EMA, then we can do that, and we own that building. And, if I don't know what will happen to the fire department, that's for the commission to decide. But I'm just saying that, there are tons of things in here that I don't see I could possibly support this as far as going through or anything like that. I've had discussions with professionals, people, and also with citizens who agree with the same thing. They don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it's a good idea. But again, I'm one person here. Everybody can have their input. And my suggestion is going to be, first of all, that this goes back to the county attorney for legal, because I think there's probably some issues here for that. And after that point, I believe this probably needs to go to a committee. And that committee, as you can see, we don't have time to work out an agreement like this in a meeting like this. That needs to look at this and decide, number one, if it needs to be done, and number two, how it needs to be done the right way without all this other stuff in there. And that is going to be my suggestion. And I'm glad to hear anything from any other commissioners. If anybody else wants to say anything, let's try it.
Having been up here for close to 30 years, I've seen a lot of things come and go. But I truly believe that the commissioner from Westmoreland hit the nail on the head, and that we have let growth get totally out of control in this county. And I knew that we would start experiencing these kinds of events when this occurred. I'm fortunate enough in my commission district to be 100% right in the heart of Hendersonville, which I'm proud of. And Chief Bush and his family were practically next door neighbors of mine, and is probably one of the finest fire chiefs that I know of. So all, honors to you for the hard work that you do. But in my opinion, this is very ill-advised, and you said it correctly when you said that it is going to open Pandora's box. We're going to be building fire stations that we can't afford. And then the next thing that's going to happen is we're going to get the third crippling tax increase in this county. And I'm going to relate an experience I had 4 years ago, and it closed with that. But I received a telephone call when a tax increase was being discussed from an elderly lady in the Williamsburg housing community there. If you drive by the house, it's a nice new, fairly new subdivision. Her husband died. She lost his income. She lost one Social Security. Her sink was stopped up. She couldn't afford a plumber to come and unstop the sink. Now, we're talking about Hendersonville, Tennessee. She couldn't afford a plumber to come and unstop her sink, and she was begging me not to vote for a tax increase. So all is not well in the city of Hendersonville. And that's really all I would have to say, other than the fact that right now, in my district, in Hendersonville, as Chief Bush knows, there is a huge rebellion going on with rezoning. And the people in this county are beginning to get their backs up in regard to this unplanned, uncontrolled growth. And I would just hope that we would slow down and start thinking about the things like this, because it is not just this issue that we're talking about, it's a bigger picture.
Anyone else that has anything?
I just want to add a little bit, and then I've got another meeting from supposed to be on. I think that everything is being looked at.
Excuse me just a minute, could you speak up a little bit? We can't hear.
Sure. The main reason this is even being looked at to begin with is because of the need for improved response times and that sort of thing for our citizens in the county. It's not to hurt them, it's to try and help and have better response times and have aid when there needs to be aid on a regular basis, on a consistent basis. That doesn't necessarily mean this is what's going to pass, but I think that at the forefront we need to remember that that's what we're trying to do is make sure citizens stay safe and we improve it. Support for them. That's it. And I've got to go to St.
Mr. Chairman, I won't beat the dead horse, but I agree with everything that you said. You and I have served on this committee since day one, and I think the volunteer fire departments will agree that we've been advocates for them as best that we could throughout these 7 years. Don't think it's a good model for us to be building fire stations for cities, because as Commissioner Hyde said, another commissioner said, they're making growth decisions totally irrelevant to us. They don't consult us. They don't. People ask me, what's going to go on there? I don't know. Ask the city of Gallatin. I see when the sign's going up. I don't know. They don't talk to us, and they're not required to. So again, as other people said, it's a bad idea to set this precedent for us in the county to pay for city powerhouse when they're making the sole decision on growing their populace where they want to grow. Seems to me they ought to be planning fire departments where the growth is. If they can't do that, then I wouldn't be in favor of us filling them out. So this thing needs to be reworked, needs to be relooked at, and that's what I'll support.
Right.
Basically, what it boils down to is $5 million can be spent better elsewhere than for this. I've had the pleasure and the honor of probably working with just about every volunteer fire department in this county. They scratch and claw for every single penny that they can possibly get. Now, do we try to give them more every year? Yes. Do we give them enough? Lord knows we don't. I appreciate everything y'all do. Hendersonville, y'all are awesome people. Y'all have helped us out with the county before, answering calls. Gallatin has. It goes both ways. We've helped them out before. And that's just called being good neighbors. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, do we need to put that in the form of a motion or anything
I mean, if
to?
you wanna just send it back to me and let me look at it, because I think there's some legal hiccups in it that definitely would need to be addressed before we go any further. And then I'll bring it back here and y'all can create a committee if that's what you want to do, or what. But this is not the document that we need to even consider, in my view.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Send it back to the law director for further review.
That's fine. All in favor?
I may address the committee. First, I want to thank you guys for agreeing that this $5 million is a bad idea and we shouldn't be in this business doing it. That's the main thing. Also, I'll stay on the record, there's nothing factually incorrect that I presented to this committee that wasn't true, wasn't accurate, and it's not a misinformation. So I just want to take that on the record and rebut on that. There's nothing factually incorrect about what I said.
Okay,
Motion to adjourn.
go ahead.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Did we move it to, do we get a vote in to get it to you?
I thought we we can't.
They made a motion, that's the reason I
Okay,
said
I'm
that.
sorry.
So we need to vote on that, yes, and I'll do it. So we made a motion just to send it to the law director to look at, and then we'll bring it back to us. So all in favor of that?
Aye.
And then Mr.
Motion to adjourn.
Sure, thank you, sir.
I know what you've been doing. You're a better person. I know. I'm just saying. I know. I know, but I can say
You need to address your comments to the chair. I'm sorry. We don't want the crowd to be addressing you. You understand what I'm saying? That's the reason for that. I apologize. No, it's not. It wouldn't be good. You need this.
Yes, sir.
We did it pretty close there, didn't we? Stuff in there to sit it All right. I'll do it. Thank you. Well, that's it. I'm not sure where this came from. No. I don't even know where it came from. Somebody's trying to do something. Whoever's trying to do something, I'm sure. But if it does, it will be my vote. I don't know if this is mine or yours or whose, but I'll take it.
Massive that we already have on.
But it's not gonna be like the same And that's a normal part of business for them. And that's all of that. But we don't need them to do that.